There are moments when the world seems to move far too quickly, and yet something within us keeps asking for an anchor point. Perhaps you have felt this before. A quiet need to return to yourself, as if an inner call were inviting you to breathe differently, perceive differently, exist differently. And it is in this almost invisible interval between what happens outside and what unfolds inside that a simple cold shower can become something much greater than a habit. Imagine just for a moment cold water touching your skin and triggering a kind of intimate alert, a summons to the present. It is not about resistance, bravery, or overcoming anything. It is about noticing that, in that single second when the body reacts, your attention fully shifts its position. The past grows silent, the future waits, and the present asserts itself as the only reality available. In this narrow and precious space, a form of presence emerges, one that we rarely access in the rush of daily life, a presence that brings you back to your own center, where mind and body finally breathe in unison. The first impact of cold water often arrives like a jolt, an almost primitive impulse, revealing how the body reacts long before the mind attempts to interpret what is happening. This immediate response is not a flaw of nature. It is a reminder that we exist far beyond the ideas we construct about ourselves. In that instant, the organism activates ancient and precise systems designed to protect, adjust, and reorganize. And as you notice this, a rare opportunity appears, the chance to observe your internal processes without any filters, as if the cold brought to the surface movements that usually pass unnoticed. It is remarkable how this gentle thermal shock reorganizes attention. The mind, which often wanders between memories and projections, is summoned to follow the body. Not because someone suggested it, but because physiology demands it. Cold water becomes an invitation to deep listening, where every sensation holds meaning, and every tiny adjustment reveals an intimate dialogue between the physical and the emotional. In this meeting, a form of consciousness arises that requires no grand explanation to exist. It simply unfolds when the present moment becomes unavoidable. When cold water touches the skin, the breath tends to quicken, as if the body were announcing that something in the environment has changed. This initial reaction is natural, almost instinctive, but it is precisely here that one of the deepest keys of this ritual resides. Little by little, the organism begins to search for a new rhythm, a pattern that allows it to move through the discomfort with stability. This spontaneous adjustment shows how biologically prepared we are to find pathways of balance even in unexpected conditions. As the air flows in and out, not only does the body reorganize, the mind begins to follow its rhythm as well. The breath becomes a bridge between the tension that appears and the calm that begins to form. At this point, it is not about controlling anything, but about noticing what is emerging. Each inhale becomes an anchor for the present, and each exhale dissolves a bit of the pressure we carry unnoticed. In this way, breathing stops being automatic and becomes intentional, capable of reshaping the perception of that moment. When cold water runs over the body, something beyond physiology arises. Quiet emotions begin to surface, as if the cold illuminated internal regions that remain dormant most of the time. It is not unusual for thoughts, memories, or concerns to appear suddenly, revealing how many layers we carry that we rarely observe with clarity. The cold shower then ceases to be just a physical stimulus and becomes a mirror reflecting what, in daily life, is often buried beneath commitments, pressures, and distractions. It is at this moment that many people realize the discomfort of the cold reveals not only the body's limits, but emotional truths asking to be acknowledged. The mind, startled by the intensity of the instant, loses its ability, even if briefly, to build automatic narratives. And in this more honest interval, it becomes possible to perceive nuances that usually slip away. Cold, instead of distancing, brings you closer to yourself, to the parts you wish to understand, and to the parts you are still learning to integrate. This closeness is one of the reasons this ritual brings such clarity, even if no one has ever explained it directly. There is a point in the cold shower when the body, after the initial shock, finds a kind of stability. It is a subtle, almost imperceptible moment when tension begins to dissolve and the mind realizes it no longer needs to struggle against what is happening. It is remarkable how this adjustment unfolds without conscious effort. The organism simply reorganizes its systems, as if quietly affirming that it is capable of moving through the experience. This moment reveals an inner intelligence that we rarely recognize, a biological wisdom that operates even when the mind tries to resist. When that stability emerges, something within shifts. The mind, once restless or scattered, follows the rhythm of the body and softens. Not because it is forced to, but because it finds support in the very moment unfolding. It is as if the cold water creates a pause inside the flow of thought, a temporary truce that allows life to be seen with greater clarity. In this quieter space, a kind of attention is born that doesn't depend on complex techniques. It happens because the body and the mind begin to speak the same language. This unexpected harmony is what turns the cold bath into such a profound ritual of presence. As the video unfolds, you may have noticed how certain experiences, even the simplest ones, create a sense of inner companionship. And when something touches that quiet place within us, a natural desire appears, the wish for others to find the same clarity. It resembles those moments when we hear a story that lights something inside us and we feel moved to share it, not out of obligation, but because we recognize the value of keeping that light alive. If in some way this reflection resonates with you, know that small gestures help this space continue to exist. Comments born from real experiences, subscriptions that keep the connection open, and even a sign of appreciation help the content reach those who also seek a moment to calm their own minds. None of this is a requirement. It is simply the way a community of sensitive people grows, through spontaneous movements that rise from the heart and find an echo in someone who needed to hear something similar. After the initial moments of impact and adaptation, something many people do not expect begins to appear, a delicate, almost transparent clarity that slowly spreads through the field of perception. It is not an ecstasy, nor a grand promise. It is a kind of lucidity that emerges from simplicity. The cold water, by demanding total presence, reduces the internal noise that usually fills our thoughts. In this cleaner landscape, the mind opens to perceive nuances that were always there, but hidden beneath the rush of the day. This clarity is neither mystical nor distant. It feels more like stepping into a quiet room after hours of noise. Suddenly, every sensation, every thought, every internal movement gains definition. It is as if the cold sharpens perception, allowing emotional reality to be seen more vividly. Many describe this state as a gentle widening of attention, where body and mind share the same tempo. And it is precisely this convergence that transforms the experience into something deeper than a simple bath. It becomes a doorway to a state of presence, rarely accessed in everyday life. As the cold water continues its path, it becomes evident that the body holds territories we seldom explore. Each area responds in a different way, as if revealing inner aspects we rarely notice. Some regions tense immediately, others respond with more softness, and this contrast creates a sensory map that helps us understand how emotions and tensions are distributed. In this sense, the cold bath becomes a kind of reading of the body itself, a reading that does not depend on language but emerges through direct experience. This perception awakens something deeper. The understanding that the body is not merely the place where life happens, but a constant messenger. Under intense conditions, it speaks more clearly, pointing toward what needs attention or rest. When this becomes apparent, many discover in the body a kind of silent ally, capable of guiding inner processes that do not depend on theories or explanations. The cold water then ceases to be just a stimulus and becomes a means of encountering this bodily wisdom we so often overlook. The contact with cold shows quickly that limits are not walls, but reference points. With each second spent fully present in the experience, what seemed impossible at first becomes bearable and then understandable. It is as if the body teaches without words that many of our assumptions about fragility are simply old interpretations that were never revisited. The cold, by revealing these limits, also reveals the inner capacity to expand them with natural ease. Realizing this brings a powerful emotional effect. Noticing that it is possible to move through an immediate discomfort without collapsing creates a quiet kind of confidence. Not the kind built on ready-made phrases, but the kind that emerges from a concrete experience. From that point on, the cold shower is no longer just a practice. It becomes a reminder that profound changes begin in small encounters with what once seemed insurmountable, but reveals itself to be far more flexible when lived with presence. In many personal accounts, those who practice cold showers describe a curious sensation of renewal right after stepping out of the water. It is not a grand renewal, but something simple and deeply human, as if the body were reminding the mind that there is always room for an inner restart. The shift in temperature triggers a physiological reorganization, and this reorganization, in turn, produces a sense of clarity that extends beyond the surface of the skin. It feels as though the body's chemistry offers the mind a new point of departure. This sensation of beginning again doesn't appear by chance. It arises from the way the body responds to a mild and momentary challenge, releasing energy that was previously scattered. The mind, upon noticing this movement, naturally follows. And when that happens, the day takes on a different tone. The world remains the same, but the perception shifts. Everything seems clearer, more alive, more accessible. This renewed perception is what turns the cold shower into a ritual of presence, not because of promises, but because of direct experience. There is a moment during the cold shower when perception begins to change in quality. The body stops being just a collection of sensations and becomes a living territory, where each point of the skin responds in a unique way. It is as if the cold draws a sensory map, revealing areas that had been numbed by routine. This clarity awakens not only the senses, but also a different way of being with oneself, more awake, more attentive, more honest. Within this expanded state of perception, small details begin to surface, details that usually go unnoticed. The rhythm of one's own pulse, the contrast between the thermal shock and the warmth inside, the subtlety of thoughts that appear and vanish quickly. It is as though the cold creates a temporary window to observe one's own existence with greater depth. And as these movements become visible, something within recognizes that presence is not an abstract concept, but a concrete phenomenon, born when the body and the mind inhabit the same place at the same time. When the cold shower ends, something curious happens. The body returns to its natural warmth, but the mind remains expanded, as if still listening to an echo from that intense moment. It is in this return that many people notice a different kind of silence, a clarity that wasn't there before. And this clarity often brings a question that doesn't seek urgency, but depth. What within me became more visible after this encounter with the cold? This question doesn't require an immediate answer. It matures slowly, like a seed planted in fertile ground. This reflection carries strength because it doesn't point outward. It turns the gaze inward, towards something we don't always admit, the need to feel our own lives with more authenticity. The cold, by interrupting automatic patterns, offers a mirror that hides nothing. And when we see ourselves without interference, we realize that there is an internal landscape waiting to be explored with calm, respect, and truth. The cold only reveals. Understanding comes later, when the temperature rises, but awareness remains awake. After a few seconds in the cold, the body begins to adjust its internal cadence. It's as though each system finds its place, its function, its timing. Even if the water remains cold, there comes a moment when the initial shock starts to dissolve, creating room for an unexpected stillness. This stillness is not the absence of sensation, it is full presence. It is the body saying, in its silent language, that it can sustain what once seemed difficult. In this state, the mind finds a kind of rest. The concerns that once occupied every corner begin to step back, not because they've been solved, but because they lose strength in the face of what is immediate. The cold water, paradoxically, creates an internal space of clarity. A clarity that doesn't need to be sought because it is already there, arising naturally from the meeting between the body and the present moment. It is a silence that asks for no explanations. It simply settles, offering the rare sensation of being exactly where you are, without excess and without escape. If this journey through the meaning of cold stirred something within you, know that it's this inner movement that allows conversations like this one to exist. When someone leaves a comment sharing their experience, subscribes to follow future reflections, or offers support in any form, they help build a space where sensitive people can breathe amid the excesses of everyday life. It's a way of saying, this made sense to me, and it might make sense to someone else too. These gestures are not just interaction. They are bonds. They are small bridges that connect stories, experiences, and quiet personal quests. By strengthening this circle, you open the way for more people to find a moment of calm, a fragment of clarity, or a new perspective about themselves. And at the heart of it, that's what this channel tries to offer. A place where life can be seen with more depth, without hurry and without noise. When a theme touches deep regions of our experience, there's a natural movement to want the conversation to continue, not only today, but in the next encounters, the next questions, the next moments when life asks for a pause. Channels that welcome sensitive, introspective people searching for meaning only stay alive because on the other side of the screen, there is someone who recognizes value in what is being said. Each sincere comment, each message about how the content resonated, each silent presence that chooses to stay, creates a kind of emotional trail that sustains this space. If this video accompanied you in any way, if it brought reflection, softened an unsettled part of your day, or illuminated a perception that had been dormant, know that simple gestures, whether an expression of support, a subscription that maintains the bond, or a comment sharing your experience, help this space expand to others who might be needing to hear something similar. It is from this discreet and genuine exchange that the strength of a community is born. A community that recognizes itself in the search for presence, meaning, and depth.